You are listening to Something Rather Than Nothing. Creator and host, Ken Vellante. Editor and producer, Peter Bauer.
This is Ken Vellante with Something Rather Than Nothing podcast, and we have artist from Washington State, Paige Pettibon. I discovered her art on Instagram and some coverage of her incredible, deemed activist art, but images of solidarity amongst Native Americans and African Americans. Paige Pettibon, I'm glad I discovered those images. I'm glad I discovered your art. Welcome to Something Rather Than Nothing.
Thank you for having me, Ken. I'm happy to be here. I'm a fan of the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much. One of the things that I really loved in doing the podcast is getting to learn more about the act of creation and about how the artists I profile create and what drives that. A big question right at the beginning is, when you were born, do you think you were an artist?
I do. I think that, but I don't think I'm unique in that way. I think a lot of people are born artists, and as we grow up, we either stick with it or don't. I think my parents valued art in our household. My sisters are also artists in their own right too, and my parents, I believe, are as well. And their parents, my maternal and paternal grandmas, were artists. So I think it was something that was valued in my household and was facilitated. Therefore, I was able to develop it as I got older. And I believe for me, it was something I could do with limited resources and on my own time as well. You don't really need much to be an artist. You just need like a pencil and a piece of paper or inspiration to, hum a tune, right? And come up with like a song. So I think, art's one of the most accessible forms of creation, for people, yeah. So I think I was an artist at birth and was nurtured as an artist, which is also really helpful.
Thanks, Paige. A follow-up question to that. I was really interested in your comments there about, the accessibility of art, right? You can hum a tune, need a pencil, and you can create things. You and I know that, but is there something about like the art world or like how it seems to be this like super refined kind of like palace and beautiful paintings? Like when people think about art that way, it's a lot different than the accessibility that you talk about. You think that's a problem for young artists that they think art is something way up in the heavens?
Definitely. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest issues I've had to combat, and probably will be one of my lifelong work in my art practice, which is having art accessible for everybody. It's also a cognitive thing too, right? I think if you're in survival mode and you are looking for food or a job or a place to live, shelter, you won't have the mental capacity to make art, which is unfortunate, right? Because it can be really good medicine for people. I know it's good medicine for me. And there was a period of time where it wasn't something that I practiced like I do now. And so my efforts, I would say like my art practice is to make it accessible for like working class people and for youth and for elders too. I think it's just really good medicine for everyone. And if I can facilitate that accessibility for people in creating or enjoying art, it could give good medicine to them, and they can have that be granted that in that world of art and be able to appreciate it. And it is an issue that I'm trying to break that barrier in my own way, I suppose. Listen to a lot of talks where folks say it is good to have art that's really, fine and expensive, but also good to make art that is affordable for everyday people. So I try to think about that. It is okay to go big and beyond and as grandiose as possible, but also think about people that, everyday people, working class people, and what art can do for them too.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
very much, yeah, I'm very much connected to those points. I grew up in the city in Pawtucket, working class, Pawtucket, Rhode Island, working class background, and um, you know, art's pretty foreign in that environment. Working class city kid, and it's there. I mean, our movies are there, and things are around that are really art, but I don't quite see it that way, or the availability, honestly, of art as medicine, which is a profound walking in art as medicine are profound realizations I have achieved within the last couple of years. And I'm 48. So I've achieved knowledge or connection to that medicine. But of course, when you're younger, the environment really dictates of whether the availability or access. And I know I see some of the work that you've done and the way you talk about your work as being more popular, like kind of like popular art or accessible art. And and I know I believe you've done some work in the schools as well.
Yeah, so I used to work at the tribal school here in Tacoma, Puyallup area. It's called Chief Leschi Schools. I was a para-educator there for a couple years, and I wanted to step into the education system because, one, I like being a student now, but it wasn't always that way. Growing up, I thought everybody thought I was stupid or something because I just didn't learn the way others did. And I needed to be taken out for supplemental reading classes or math classes. I was a terrible speller. I wasn't great at math. And I think just the way I learn is very different than how the school systems are set up. And it's changed some, but if we really, I think the way it is now isn't perfect. There's so much more we need to do. And so that's another reason why I decided to become a paraeducator at Chief Leschi Schools, because I wanted to be involved in my community in a good way. But it was so hard. It was so difficult. Our students were struggling with so many things that our school wasn't able to help or guide or really just be a strong support system for our students through education, through mental health, or anything. And there's a big division. So it was really frustrating for me because I couldn't make as much headway as I wanted to. But the way I was able to connect with students was through art. And I was able to bring them outside of their world through art by having them be involved in what this art show called the Yahoo Show, which was at the King Street Station in Seattle, which turned into a whole new, it's just become its own thing now. I can't even describe the reach it has. It's a collective of Indigenous artists, of over 200 artists. They work with libraries in different cities around Washington, and they have digital workshops for folks. They just do everything for Indigenous folks so that they can become successful artists, having them be visible in space, all types of spaces, and then also having workshops, because being an artist is really a full-time job. Coming up with proposals, writing, writing artist statements and such. It's a lot of work, and luckily I have really strong support, because I definitely would be overwhelmed and wouldn't be able to do what I can do if I didn't have such great support. But yeah, what was your question?
No. I know we're just chatting. No, it was just really just connecting back. I was asking about the public, the working in a public school. I actually represent para educators, education support professionals, and a lot of them. So I'm very connected to the work that's done there, but I'm also very connected to both the hopes and deep problems of K-12 public education in the United States of America. I know it, and and thanks for your comments on that. So Paige, I wanted to delve a little bit more into the aspect of the collective. I know that some of the art images that you've had, and you've done some work with a collective around bringing awareness to solidarity amongst people, about voting, about important public and political matters in this country right now. What about that collective, and what that project that you're working on?
So the Yahoo show has many. There's a few curators. Asia Tail was the first person I met, and she's the curator. I believe it was her idea to come up with the Yahoo show, and then she has Tracy Rector, who is a producer. She's in film, and then there's Satpreet Kalan, who is another artist and a very strong advocate for artists getting paid. All of them are really strong advocates for artists getting paid, and I think their support for to reach out to Indigenous artists and be like, this is your worth, and these are the tools we can help you, and we think you would be good for this project. So they have such a big pool of artists that they try to reach out to, and they try to grow it. Mostly it's in the Pacific Northwest, but it doesn't mean that's just Pacific Northwest tribes, because a lot of Indigenous folks have moved for whatever reason to this region. So I try to think of it as like an intertribal relationship, because it gets a little bit tricky when it comes to tribes and nations, because it's not confined to these binaries, right? A lot of people are mixed, and a lot of people are different tribes, and a lot of people have moved from other tribes to this region. So it's all tribes. It's not just Pacific Northwest tribes artists that are included, and it ranges from different art practices. Some people that are they are musicians, or digital artists, printmakers, art of all different mediums, and architects, and just a really great collective of different types of art. And they have, I don't know, I'm sure all the artists feel this way, where they feel like a special connection to the curators, because the curators are really good at finding the right projects for us. So it just we feel like super seen, because they're like, Paige, you're an Afro-Indigenous artist, and we really want us to make these posters for protesters. There's a strong need. Are you able to do it in this time frame? And we're going to give you this much money. And I'm like, yes. Like, I feel like they read my mind because that's exactly what I needed to do. I have been in quarantine this whole time. I really did not go out except for like the grocery store or the post office. And I was pretty frustrated, and I had all this like emotion that I didn't really have an outlet to express, or really feel like I had an outlet to express, because I wasn't protesting in the streets. And I'm not a natural protester. Like, my form of protesting is through art or through learning
Yeah.
an indigenous language, or just being me, I guess. You know, that to me is activism as well. So when I made these posters, I just felt this amazing reach. I mean, the posters went all the way to New York too, and they go beyond me, which is something that I've started to see this year, is art going beyond people in my community, and like going beyond me. And that's, I think, one of like the greatest things you could hope for as an artist, is have it resonate with folks that you don't even know. So it's been the Yahoo Art Collective has been a very life changing community for me in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things, I really appreciate your comment about, for you, the art was to be political. I mean, people think protesting is one thing, and disruption, as activists know, is many different types of things, right? It could be conceptual, could be breaking down old beliefs, or art, or smashing a window. If people look at different options for disruption, right? One of the things, one of the things I wanted to ask you is, all right, so Paige, it's great to hear the support you have. What about your process as an artist, right? In identifying as Black, White, and Salish tribe. When you do that, or when you did that, what was the response like from art? From the art world. I'm not talking about you or me. I'm talking about identity. What happened in that process? Was it like, where do I fit you? What was that like?
Yeah, it's so, oh gosh. Okay, so I just graduated from the Native Pathways program, and we talk about these concepts so much um, about identity, and how we do not fit in these Western binaries, right? And I think this is starting to change. I think there's a movement starting to change, because a lot of people, you know, identify as non-gendered binaries, right? And I think race can be the same way too. Like how people perceive me. I honestly have a very like I have a very like restricted idea of what people perceive me as, because I know I am fair skinned, but I'm definitely like not white passing to me. So all of that plays a factor. But I think as someone who is a descendant of um, indigenous folks, as someone who is a descendant of slaves, and as someone who is a descendant of white settlers, it is my responsibility to um, take that and to process it, right? To understand my privileges and understand like what I can do to pass on for the next generations. I think about, so my dad is white and my mom is Black and Native, and reclaiming my indigenous and Black culture is really important to me. And I think by doing that, I show others that it's okay to be multi racial. So I don't deny my white side either, but I definitely don't believe in the Western colonial settler norms. But I try to gracefully question it, and try not to attack it in a way that doesn't promote a progressive conversation of, because I think like default mode is white settler perspective. You know, that's a default mode. You see it in history books, you see it in movies, but and just like fiction, nonfiction, you see that the default mode is to think this way. And so with my work, I try to challenge it in a way that's that breaks these binaries. It makes people just kind of think introspectively, and I try to be a safe place for respectful questions. You know, I don't really have the patience for people who are on extremes on both sides. You know, a lot of people are thinking they're having their woke moment by canceling everything, and then there's people who are on the far other side that are just so conservative, and I think that doesn't really leave room for growth on either end, and it ends up being kind of a static belief. And I think you can't really grow from a place of stillness, right? You have to be moving. You have to be open to listening to someone, and you don't have to agree with them, but I think just being able to listen will keep us moving forward. And the work that I do, I try to have this multi identity, multi culture, multiracial perspective of seeing Black, Indigenous people doing things that are maybe otherwise not what one would think. Like, I did a painting of my nephew who's Mexican, Black, and Puyallup, and it's a painting of his first time fishing on the Puyallup River. And I think people, maybe they don't see that, right? Maybe they don't see that in art. They don't see as much color or, Black children in natural settings. It's all urban settings. And we are urban natives, urban Afro-Indigenous people, but we also connect back to our natural environment and to our roots, to our ancestral ways of being. So, we aren't in this like binary of just like city kids too. We definitely go back to nature and balance our lives the best way we can in this modern world.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a lot of in your comments that made me think, and I've been thinking for a long time about the options for the discussion, right? Whether it's the binary of politics, Democrats, Republicans, I don't fit into either, or my racial ethnic background, the white, Black, and others, census, very important. Identity is very important, but my personal truth is I don't know how to quite pick all that. So, even our conversation, right, and around this is like, is this conversation more fertile, like on my side, to say, I'm Irish, in descending order: Irish, British, Canadian, French, working class from Quebecois, Native American, Senegambian, African, and do we get anything better than me saying, okay, this is a cis 48-year-old white guy talking to activist artists, which, it's like, how do people, like what we bring into this conversation, I, as a philosopher, always found more fertile ground in talking about, wow, this is a boundary here. This is a question of identity here, in having the discussion there, because we're going to miss each other on the the way it's framed for us. I think that's where for me, that's where the communication sometimes really breaks down. It's like, you're a Democrat, I'm a Republican. Now I know how to behave, and you know how to behave, right, towards each other. And I don't think it's fair.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's there's a danger in that. Like, and I think we see it with the divide in our nation, right? America is not divided by just like Democrats and Republicans. we're not just divided by white and black. We have Asian Americans, we have Native Americans, we have nations within this nation that people don't really think about or even know how sovereign nations within America work. So I think if we first dismantled these binaries, we're able to move forward. And I honestly, like, I have changed so much throughout my life, and I'm only 33. Yeah, 33. I forget how old I am all the time. I'll be 34 July 12th. And once I learned that I don't have to sit with this idea that I had of myself, that I have of other people or what I'm supposed to be doing, once I learned that I can pretty much do anything and I can grow from an idea, I was like set free. And my mom has always taught me. Okay, so my parents are pretty funny. My dad, he thinks he's like this Republican guy, you know, he was like pro-Trump. It was a pretty hard time, I would say. And then my mom, she's a little bit liberal, but she kind of has a conservative side too. And but my mom was always really good at saying people who do bad things aren't bad people, right? And that was the hardest thing for me. I'm like, but they're doing bad things. They make me feel bad, and they're doing bad things. I think they're a bad person. And she's like, no, that doesn't make them a bad person. So once I see that, like, you know, for me, I do believe your actions say a lot, but I do, now that I've gotten older, I do understand that we are a product of trauma, success, our communities. We're a product of our ancestors, our family lineage, histories before us, you know, and that makes up a lot of who we are. And in the present moment, you know, this tension that we start to feel with politics and health crisis and, you know, capitalistic society. So we are these products, and it manifests itself in different ways. And it doesn't make us in this binary of good or bad. It doesn't it doesn't help us in any kind of way to be stuck in a, you know, these patterns that define us. Like, I think we can break these patterns and make for good change. And I try to think that when I meet someone and I have an impression of them and I don't like it, I'm like, well, you know, there's room for change. There's room for growth. They may change because I have a conversation with them and we may find some common ground. So I try to think that, like, there's room for growth, room for change. And I find it to be a difficult exercise sometimes. But I think with, like, people who I hold close, they hold me accountable to keeping that. My partner, whenever I complain about anything, my partner's like, well, you don't really know if they really mean that. And I get mad. But then I'm like, that's true, because I'm not the best at conversation. I think that's why I do so well with art, because the way I communicate is, I don't think is as clear for some folks. And, you know, if we have a different cultural background, words aren't always the best way to get a point across. So I think for me, using my art, I definitely feel really good feedback and reception from my art versus things that I say. So I feel comfortable in that medium.
Yeah, how you present yourself to the world, right? And then with art, it's always this kind of, you know, this is you, but it's an object as well. We're speaking with Paige Pettibon, and Paige, one of the big questions, Paige, what is art?
Okay, so I've been thinking about this for all week. I've gone on a couple walks outside, and just thinking about it. And to me, the human species, us we are animals, right? And I think what sets us
Yeah.
apart is language from other animals. I think language sets us apart. And I think art is another form of language. Maybe it's the language of our spirit. Maybe it's the language of our soul. But to me, it is another form of language. It's a way to communicate with others. And also, I've been listening to the show a lot, and a lot of people have their different ideas of art and what it is not. But I do think that art it can be of like the natural world. I think of songbirds. I think they have their own songs, which is, art in itself. And their homes, their little nests are a little piece of art. They collect things and they curate their little homes, based off of their environment. And I think that's what we do as artists too, right? We create these little pieces of art, which could be like a home of our environment. And then also, another thing is that art to me is my medicine. It really is. It's helped me through my life, my experiences, and communicating with people. I feel like if I didn't have art, I probably would be an outcast. I probably would be not in a good place. So to me, it is medicine as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for that. I've really connected it to it in that way. And one of the things when I first, and it's just me to explore the point just on language, I always attach myself really directly to that when an artist says that, because for me, I had reached a point about 3 years ago, and what I was facing, which was loss, upset, not feeling effective, not feeling at home in a lot of environments that I was in. I started painting, and so I needed a new language. I didn't know it at the time, but I needed something to yell and scream, almost, well, a bunch with painting, and that's what it was for me. So I needed to say something, and I needed to yell it out at the time, and that was the spark for me becoming an artist. It was only about 3 years ago, and it was profound. So whenever you hear somebody say language, for me it was a loud screaming at that time. But I didn't, whatever words and us talking right now, that wasn't working for me. So I really connect to that piece of the language.
I hear you.
So one of the general questions about, I think it's maybe identity and where you come from, is a question that, who or what made you who you are?
Okay. So it's really strange. I would say like my parents and my ancestors made me who I am today. The people I'm around, my community, but the funny thing is I feel like your sisters or siblings, your sisters and brothers, or your cousins are kind of like your parallel lives, like they're a lot like you, and they're set in a different maybe a different generation or time or something, but they're like an extension of you in a way. And I have two younger sisters. My older sister actually passed away, but I think about our upbringing, and I think about how I feel like we were probably raised the same, but we all ended up in different paths. And so I always that's why this is a hard question for me, because I feel like I'm a result of my environment and also like um, that nurture versus nature, right? Like what's inherent. But I'm like, but then how come my like the what I do and the way I process things and my outlook is different than my sister's. So that really stumps me. It's
Yeah.
like the math equation on that doesn't quite add up. So there's another factor that has to be involved in it, right? That I don't know what it is. There's like
Yeah,
an
you
X
create a
factor.
yeah, it's like one of those things in math where you create a new symbol to even out the equation, but it's kind of it's not proper.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. I don't know what
um,
the
uh,
statistics would be of what I would have ended up like any other way, but I am what I am.
I like the idea of like the different trajectories and echoes of like siblings and relatives from the same source, that go out. Um, all right, Paige. Another big one. And I know this is the question you really liked, is why is there something rather than nothing?
I got a couple things for you, Ken. Okay. So you know how you come up with the most profound things right before you sleep? At least I do. That's what keeps me up, is like thinking of these big life questions. Um, so I was thinking, before I went to bed, I was like meditating on this question, and I thought one of the most harmful things you could do to a person is to put them in solitary confinement, to take all things away, right? And put nothing in place of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
That's like one of the worst things you could do. And so I was thinking,
Wow.
our nature is to have something. Um, and then I brought the question up to my partner, and he's like, well, we didn't choose something. We were born into something. Like something happened to us. And I was like, oh, that's a good
Yeah,
perspective too. It's like we're just passing on the legacy of something.
yeah. I uh I I I I I I really appreciate the answers to this, and yeah, there's something profound in there about the solitary, right? And uh the person unto themselves, like trying to connect to the community. Yeah. Oh, I love that answer. Paige, as I mentioned at the outset, I encountered your work on Instagram, and I know some of your pieces, which I actually put up on my Facebook, and the
Awesome.
great a lot of just yeah, just beautiful, profound images. Really enjoy your art. Well, I do, but I want you to give folks the roadmap to finding your art, what's out there, and maybe as it might be appropriate with things coming up. I don't know the state up in Washington, or events that are going on there, but just what you'd like people to know about where to find your art.
Thank you, Ken. So I only have two Instagram accounts. My uh, art page is Paige_Pettibon. And then my jewelry is at plain to C, plain_2_C, SEA. Like it's from like plains region to the sea. Um, that's what my name is after. And then my website is paigepettibon.com. Also, I have some upcoming events with this Smithsonian. They are doing a digital exhibition that should be coming out this year. I'm not sure exactly when. And then if anyone comes to the Seattle area, they can go visit the Stonington Gallery. I have 2 paintings in there right now, and I'll have another one up in there in June. I have a art project that I am working on that will be in Portland. I'm not exactly sure the location, but there will be a indoor mural on a wall that I'll be working on for this new sustainable building project that they're working on. I also have a mural at North Seattle College that will be in the works, that will be finished at the end of June, I believe, too, for their one of their art electives is to painting a mural with an artist's design, and they picked my design, which was really cool. And so I'm going to give a talk up there with them, and they'll have they'll paint the mural. It's really cool. And then let's see, I have little odds and end jobs around Tacoma too. I think of myself as like a community artist. So there's these I don't know if you know this, Ken, but I am a Lushootseed learner. Lushootseed's the indigenous language of the Puyallup people, and the Puyallup people are the indigenous people of the land that I live on. And so there'll be Lushootseed yard signs that people will have throughout the city of Tacoma and Puyallup. There are these recycling bins that I worked with the city of Tacoma to work on, so that they're changing the way we recycle. And they wanted these beautiful, these bins to have beautiful art on them, so people will be more likely to go with this change of how to recycle their cardboard, metal, and glass. So it's just like little stuff here and there. And but the Smithsonian was probably one of the coolest opportunities I've had so far. Something that's available nationwide. So that was really cool. But yeah, I'll keep up the good work so people will be able to find me.
A lot of options. I saw the picture of the recycling bin, and Paige, you pulled it off. I mean, nobody thinks about recycling bins, but the thing was gorgeous. So, amen, you did it. You pulled it off. But one of the things I wanted to say is the podcast is international, but we do have a great deal of listeners in the Pacific Northwest. And while I do, cover a lot, as far as the local scene, I definitely, there's a feel here that you can get out of the show from Washington State and in Oregon. And I appreciate you mentioned some of those local pieces, because there's a lot of listeners who actually may have the opportunity to check out those public installations in Seattle, and you had mentioned over one in Portland. So we'll be keeping our eyes open for those. But Paige Pettibon, Paige, I just want to thank you so much. A great conversation with you, and I really wanted to learn about all the things that I asked. I wanted to learn. I'm seeing your art and seeing where you're coming from, and working in a collective, and then thinking about the minds of the youth and what they're presented. I just want to commend you on your work, and thank you for your time stopping on.
Thank you, Ken, and I commend you for your work too. I've learned a lot about artists from all over, and thinking about these big questions that stretch my mind. I think it's always good to go beyond yourself and think beyond what you know. So I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you for your kind words. And Paige, have a great day.
You too, Ken.
This is Something Rather Than Nothing.